Lewis Thompson's world shatters as the intoxicated Kazon female utters those fateful words. "Let me bite that thing between your legs, human." The dimly lit corridor of Nexus 7 space station suddenly feels claustrophobic. Lewis, Earth's chief diplomat, stands frozen, his mind racing. The peace talks with the Kazon, teetering on the brink of collapse, now hang by a thread thinner than the sweat beading on his forehead. Estelle, the Kazan beauty, sways before him. Her iridescent skin shimmers under the flickering lights, her four eyes unfocused from the effects of Earth alcohol. Louis's heart pounds. He'd noticed her striking features during the negotiations, but now, alone in this secluded passageway, her alien allure is overwhelming. I'm sorry, but I can't," Louis stammers, acutely aware of the cultural chasm between them. He struggles to form a diplomatic response, knowing the fate of Earth rests on maintaining positive relations with the technologically superior Kazan. Estelle steps closer, her sweet, unfamiliar scent clouding Louis's senses. He backs away, his mind whirling. How can he diffuse this situation without offending her? How can he explain the anatomical misunderstanding without causing embarrassment? A shadow moves at the end of the corridor. Louis's blood runs cold as he spots a Kazan spy observing their encounter. The implications hit him like a plasma blast. This could be misinterpreted as a human seduction attempt, a grave insult in Kazan culture. Before Louis can react, the spy disappears. Panic sets in as he realizes the potential consequences. The peace talks, Earth's safety, the lives of billions, all now balanced on this chance encounter. Estelle, oblivious to the dire situation, reaches for Louis. He gently catches her hand, his touch eliciting a gasp from her. The connection is electric, unexpected. Despite the circumstances, Louis feels a spark of attraction, a forbidden pull towards this alien woman. Suddenly, alarms blare throughout the station. Emergency lights bathe the corridor in a harsh red glow. Louis's comm unit crackles to life, delivering the news he dreads. The Kazan delegation has abruptly ended negotiations. They've issued an ultimatum. Earth must surrender within 24 hours or face total annihilation. As the gravity of the situation sinks in, Estelle's eyes clear. The alcohol's effects seem to evaporate in the face of the crisis. She looks at Louis, horror and embarrassment replacing her earlier boldness. "What have I done?" she whispers, her voice trembling. Louis meets her gaze, seeing not just an alien diplomat, but a person caught in a mess of misunderstandings and cultural clash. In that moment, he knows he must find a way to salvage the peace talks, prevent interstellar war, and perhaps explore the unexpected connection forming between them. With time ticking away and the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, Louis takes a deep breath. He has 24 hours to untangle this diplomatic nightmare, navigate his growing feelings for Estelle, and somehow prevent the annihilation of his species. The challenge ahead is monumental, but as he looks into Estelle's four eyes, he feels a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this unlikely encounter could be the key to not just averting war, but forging a deeper understanding between their two species. The corridor echoes with the sound of approaching footsteps. Whatever happens next, Louis knows his actions in the coming hours will shape the future of human-Kazan relations. Forever. With determination setting his jaw, he prepares to face the storm that's about to break. The approaching footsteps grew louder, jolting Louis into action. He quickly guided Estelle to a nearby alcove, shielding her from view. As they pressed against the wall, their bodies close, Louis felt the heat radiating from her alien skin. "We need to talk," he whispered urgently. "But not here. Can you meet me in the human sector in an hour?" Estelle nodded, her four eyes blinking in rapid succession. "I'll try," she murmured, her voice permeated with uncertainty. As the footsteps passed, Louis slipped away, his mind racing. He had to act fast to prevent this misunderstanding from spiraling into an interstellar catastrophe. Back in the human delegation's quarters, Louis found barely controlled chaos. Diplomats huddled in small groups, their faces etched with worry. Admiral Chen, the head of Earth's delegation, paced the room, her comlink chirping incessantly. "Thompson!" Chen barked as Louis entered. "What in the void happened out there?" Louis took a deep breath and launched into his explanation. carefully omitting the more intimate details of his encounter with Estelle. As he spoke, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. "So let me get this straight," Chen said, pinching the bridge of her nose. "A drunken cultural misunderstanding has brought us to the brink of war?" "Essentially, yes," Louis replied, his throat dry. "But I believe I can fix this. If I can speak with Estelle again, convince her to act as a cultural liaison." "Absolutely not," interrupted Dr. Samuels, the xenobiologist. "Any further contact could be seen as manipulation. We can't risk it." Louis opened his mouth to argue, but Chen raised a hand, silencing him. "No, Samuels is right. We can't afford any more mistakes. Thompson, you're confined to quarters until further notice." As Louis was escorted to his room, his mind raced. He couldn't just sit idly by while Earth's fate hung in the balance. He had to find a way to reach Estelle. Hours passed as Louis paced his quarters, formulating and discarding plans. Finally, as the station's night cycle began, he made his move. Using his diplomatic override codes, he slipped out of his room and into the dimly lit corridors. The station was eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by an oppressive silence. Louis moved cautiously, using his knowledge of Nexus 7's layout to avoid the increased security patrols. As he neared the Kazon sector, Louis overheard hushed voices coming from a nearby conference room. Curiosity piqued, he edged closer, straining to hear. "Perfect opportunity," a gravelly voice said. "With tensions this high, a small push is all we need to start a war." Louis's blood ran cold. He recognized that voice. It belonged to General Hawkins, a notorious war hawk from Earth's military. "And once the fighting starts," another voice added, this one with the distinct resonance of a Kazon, "our weapons contracts will make us very, very rich." Stunned, Louis backed away. He had stumbled upon a conspiracy that threatened to undo everything he had worked for. With renewed urgency, he pressed on towards the Kazon quarters. Using maintenance access tunnels, Louis navigated the labyrinthine structure of Nexus 7. The cramped passageways were hot and stuffy, forcing him to move on his hands and knees. Sweat trickled down his back as he crawled through the darkness, guided only by the faint glow of emergency lighting. Finally, after what felt like hours of claustrophobic maneuvering, Louis reached the access panel near Estelle's quarters. He paused, listening intently for any sign of movement outside. Hearing nothing, he carefully removed the panel and slipped into the corridor. Estelle's door was just a few meters away. Louis approached cautiously, his heart pounding. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. What if she refused to help? What if this only made things worse? Before he could second-guess himself further, the door slid open. Estelle stood there, her iridescent skin shimmering in the low light. Her 4 eyes widened in surprise. "Louis," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "I had to see you," he replied, stepping inside as the door closed behind him. "Estelle, I need your help. We need to explain the misunderstanding, or our species might go to war." Estelle's expression shifted from surprise to willpower. "I want to help, but Commander Zax has confined me to quarters. He thinks I've been manipulated by humans." Louis quickly outlined what he had overheard, the conspiracy to push their species into war. As he spoke, Estelle's face hardened with commitment. "We have to stop them," she said firmly. "But how can we—" Her words were cut off by a blaring alarm. Red emergency lights flooded the room as a computerized voice announced a security breach in the Kazan sector. "They've discovered I'm here," Louis realized, panic rising in his chest. Estelle grabbed his hand, pulling him towards a hidden panel in the wall. "Quick, this way!" As they slipped into the maintenance tunnel, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Louis and Estelle crawled through the narrow space, their bodies pressed close in the confines of the tunnel. Suddenly, the artificial gravity fluctuated, sending them tumbling against each other. Louis found himself face to face with Estelle, their bodies tangled in the zero-G environment. For a moment, despite the danger, he was acutely aware of her alien beauty, the warmth of her skin against his. The gravity snapped back on, breaking the spell. They continued their frantic escape through the tunnels, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter behind them. After what felt like an eternity of crawling and climbing, they reached a maintenance hatch. Louis pushed it open, and they tumbled out into a bustling common area. As they stood disheveled and breathless, They found themselves surrounded by shocked onlookers, both human and Kazon. The crowd fell silent, staring at the unlikely pair. Louis and Estelle exchanged a glance, realizing that their next actions could determine the fate of both their species. The tension in the air was palpable as everyone waited to see what would happen next. For a heartbeat, silence reigned in the common area, broken only by the soft hum of the station's systems. Then, chaos erupted. Commander Zax burst into the room, his towering Kazan form flanked by armed guards. His 4 eyes blazed with fury as he pointed at Louis. "Arrest that human!" he bellowed. "He has kidnapped Estelle and compromised our security." Before Louis could protest, Captain Sarah Chen and her human security team rushed in from the opposite side, their weapons drawn. "Stand down, Commander," Chen ordered, her voice steely. "You have no authority over Earth diplomats." The two groups faced off, the air crackling with potential violence. Civilians, both human and Kazan, pressed themselves against the walls, eyes wide with fear. Estelle, sensing the powder keg about to ignite, stepped forward. Her iridescent skin shimmered under the harsh lights as she raised her hands, addressing both sides. "Please, listen to me," she began, her voice carrying across the tense silence. "This is all a misunderstanding. Louis didn't kidnap me. He came to me because he discovered a plot to sabotage our peace talks." She went on to explain the cultural confusion that had led to the diplomatic breakdown, emphasizing Louis's genuine desire for peace. As she spoke, Louis noticed the hostility in the room begin to ebb, replaced by confusion and curiosity. Just as it seemed the crisis might be averted, a deafening explosion rocked the station. Louis stumbled, nearly falling as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Alarms blared, their shrill wail adding to the cacophony. "We're under attack," someone shouted. Captain Chen's comlink crackled to life. "Captain, the main reactor's been sabotaged. We're losing power and life support." In the ensuing panic, Louis found himself separated from Estelle. He caught a glimpse of her being whisked away by Commander Zax before the crowd swallowed her from view. Drawing on his years of diplomatic training, Louis forced down his own fear and raised his voice. "Everyone, please remain calm. We need to evacuate in an orderly fashion." To his surprise, people began to listen. He caught Captain Chen's eye and nodded. Together, they began coordinating the evacuation efforts, guiding people towards the escape pods. As Louis directed a group of elderly humans towards safety, a young ensign ran up to him, panic etched on her face. "Sir, we have a problem. A group of children is trapped in the Section 7B. The corridors collapsed, and we can't reach them." Without hesitation, Louis made his decision. "I'll go. Keep the evacuation moving and inform Captain Chen of my location." He set off at a run, navigating the increasingly unstable corridors of Nexus 7. The station groaned around him, metal twisting as systems failed. Twice he nearly lost his footing as the gravity shifted unpredictably. Finally, he reached Section 7B. The corridor ahead was a mess of twisted metal and sparking wires. Through a small gap, he could see the frightened faces of the trapped children. "It's okay," he called out, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm here to help. Can you move towards me?" The children began to crawl through the debris, guided by Louis's voice. One by one, he helped them through the gap, checking each for injuries. As the last child emerged, a violent tremor shook the station. Louis looked up in horror as the ceiling began to cave in. He shoved the children forward, shielding them with his body as debris rained down. When the dust settled, Louis found himself trapped. The collapsing bulkhead had sealed off his escape route. His comm link crackled with static, useless. As he searched desperately for a way out, the air began to thin. The life support systems were failing faster than he'd realized. Louis felt his head start to swim, his vision blurring at the edges. Just as he was about to lose hope, he heard a sound. Metal groaning, then a hiss of escaping air. Through his fading vision, he saw a figure in an environmental suit emerging from a half-melted doorway. "Estelle!" She rushed to his side, her 4 eyes wide with concern behind her faceplate. Louis tried to speak, but no words came out. His lungs burned, desperate for oxygen. Estelle's hands moved swiftly, efficiently. She pressed her helmet against his face, creating a seal. Louis felt a rush of cool, life-giving air fill his lungs. He gasped, his vision clearing. Their faces were inches apart, separated only by the thin barrier of Estelle's faceplate. In that moment, as she literally breathed life into him, Louis felt a connection deeper than any he'd ever experienced. Estelle's eyes met his, and he saw in them a mixture of drive, fear, and something else, something that mirrored the feelings stirring in his own heart. But there was no time to dwell on these emotions. The station shuddered again, a stark reminder of their perilous situation. Estelle helped Louis to his feet, supporting him as they made their way through the disintegrating station. They had just reached a junction when a group of armed figures emerged from the shadows. Louis recognized one of them, General Hawkins, the war hawk he'd overheard earlier. "Well, well," Hawkins sneered, raising his weapon. "Looks like we have some loose ends to tie up." Louis and Estelle exchanged a glance. Without words, they understood each other perfectly. As one, they moved, turned to face their attackers. Louis's mind raced, searching for a way out of this deadly standoff. Suddenly, the station lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. In that moment of chaos, Estelle acted. With lightning-fast reflexes, she grabbed Louis and pulled him through a nearby maintenance hatch. They tumbled into a narrow crawl space as the sound of weapons fire erupted behind them. "This way," Estelle hissed, leading Louis through a maze of conduits and access tunnels. They emerged into a hangar bay, alarms blaring and emergency lights flashing. The station's structural integrity was failing rapidly. Debris rained down around them as they sprinted towards a waiting shuttle. Just as they reached the vessel, a massive explosion rocked the station. Louis stumbled, nearly falling, but Estelle caught him and hauled him into the shuttle. She slammed her hand on the launch controls, and they shot out of the disintegrating station. Through the viewscreen, they watched in horror as Nexus 7 tore itself apart. The station that had been meant to bring their species together was now nothing more than an expanding debris field. "We need to get to a safe distance," Louis said, taking the co-pilot's seat. The reactor could go critical at any moment. Estelle nodded, her four eyes focused intently on the controls as she navigated the treacherous field of debris. They had barely cleared the danger zone when a blinding flash lit up space behind them. The shockwave hit their small craft, sending it tumbling end over end. When they finally regained control, Louis and Estelle sat in stunned silence, staring at the empty space where Nexus 7 had once been. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. "All those people," Estelle whispered, her voice tight with emotion. Louis reached out, placing his hand on her shoulder. "We'll find out who did this," he promised, "and we'll make sure they face justice." Before Estelle could respond, their shuttle's communication system crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, this is the USS Concordia. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Louis leaned forward, activating the comm link. "This is Louis Thompson, Earth diplomat. We've escaped from Nexus 7, requesting immediate assistance and safe harbor." There was a moment of silence before the voice returned. "Acknowledged, Mr. Thompson. We're locking on to your position now. Prepare for tractor beam." As the Concordia's massive form appeared before them, Louis and Estelle exchanged a look of relief tinged with apprehension. They had survived, but the real challenges were just beginning. The shuttle was guided into one of the Concordia's hangar bays. As the airlock cycled, Louis turned to Estelle. "Whatever happens next, we're in this together," he said softly. Estelle's iridescent skin shimmered as she nodded. "Together," she agreed. The airlock doors slid open, revealing a contingent of armed security officers led by a stern-faced man with Admiral's insignia. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Admiral Horatio Blake," he said, his eyes darting between Louis and Estelle. "I think you both have quite a story to tell. If you'll follow me, we'll debrief in the secure conference room." As they walked through the corridors of the Concordia, Louis couldn't help but notice the curious and sometimes hostile glances directed at Estelle. He moved closer to her, a silent show of support and protection. The conference room was austere and functional, dominated by a large holodisplay showing the debris field that was once Nexus 7. Admiral Blake took his seat at the head of the table, gesturing for Louis and Estelle to sit. "Now," Blake said, leaning forward, "I want to hear everything. Start from the beginning." Louis and Estelle began their tale, their words overlapping and complementing each other as they recounted the events that had led to this moment. They explained the cultural misunderstanding, the sabotage attempt, and their desperate escape from the doomed station. As they spoke, Louis noticed a change in Admiral Blake's expression. The initial suspicion gave way to interest, then to something that looked almost like hope. "This is remarkable," Blake said when they finished. "Despite everything, you two have managed to form a working partnership. Perhaps all is not lost for human-Kazan relations after all." Just as Louis was about to respond, the conference room door slid open. Commander Zax stormed in, his massive Kazan form radiating fury. "What is the meaning of this?" Zax demanded, glaring at Estelle. "Why is she not in confinement? She has betrayed her people by consorting with humans." Louis stood, placing himself between Zax and Estelle. "Commander, you don't understand. Estelle saved my life, and together we uncovered a plot that threatens both our species." Zax's four eyes narrowed dangerously. "Step aside, human. Estelle will return with me to face Kazan justice." The tension in the room was palpable. Admiral Blake rose slowly from his seat, his voice calm but authoritative. "Commander Zax, this is my ship. No one will be taken anywhere without my say-so." For a moment, it seemed Zax might challenge the Admiral, but then, surprisingly, it was Estelle who broke the standoff. "Louis," she said, her voice steady, "I have an idea. Tell them about the extremist group we discovered." Louis nodded, understanding her intent. He quickly outlined what they had overheard on Nexus 7, the conspiracy to push their species into war for profit. "Admiral," Louis continued, "I propose a joint human-Kazan mission to investigate this group. It could be a chance to prove that our species can work together effectively." Blake's eyebrows rose, considering the proposal. "It's risky," he mused, "but it could be exactly what we need to salvage this situation." He turned to Zax. "Commander, what say you?" Zax's expression was unreadable, his inner conflict evident. Finally, he spoke. "I will agree to this, on one condition. I will join this mission to oversee Kazan interests." "Agreed," Blake nodded. "I'll assign Captain Chen to represent human interests as well." He looked at Louis and Estelle. "You two will lead this effort. Your unique partnership may be our best hope for success." As the details of the mission were hashed out, Louis felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He glanced at Estelle, seeing his own emotions mirrored in her alien features. They had started this journey as diplomat and interpreter. Now they found themselves at the center of a mission that could determine the future of human-Kazan relations. The Concordia's sensors had detected an energy signature consistent with a stealth ship leaving Nexus 7 just before its destruction. It was their first real lead, and as the ship set course for the uninhabited planet where the trail led, Louis and Estelle threw themselves into mission preparations. They worked tirelessly, developing communication protocols and creating a shared database of their respective technologies. As they collaborated, Louis found himself drawn more and more to Estelle's incredible mind and unwavering drive. Late one night cycle, as they pored over sensor data, Louis noticed Estelle stifling a yawn. "Maybe we should call it a night," he suggested gently. Estelle shook her head, her iridescent skin shimmering under the soft light. "We're so close to a breakthrough. I can feel it." Louis smiled, admiring her dedication. "Tell me about your home," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What was it like growing up on the Kazan homeworld?" Estelle's four eyes blinked in surprise at the sudden change of topic. Then slowly she began to speak. Her words painted a vivid picture of a world so different from Earth, yet filled with the same hopes and dreams that united all sentient beings. As Estelle's story came to an end, Louis found himself sharing his own childhood memories. They talked for hours, their mission preparations forgotten, as they bridged the gap between their two worlds. The ship's computer chimed, indicating the start of a new day cycle. Louis and Estelle looked at each other, suddenly aware of how much time had passed. "We should get some rest," Louis said, standing up. "Big day tomorrow." Estelle nodded but hesitated as she rose. "Louis," she said softly, "thank you for everything." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Lewis felt a connection deeper than he'd ever experienced. But before he could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel," Admiral Blake's voice announced. "We are approaching the target planet. All team members report to the briefing room immediately." The spell broken, Louis and Estelle hurried out of the room. As they walked briskly down the corridor, Louis couldn't help but wonder what challenges awaited them on the planet's surface, and what this mission would mean for their growing bond. Relationship and the fate of their species. The briefing room buzzed with tension as Admiral Blake laid out the mission parameters. Louis and Estelle exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging the weight of responsibility on their shoulders. "We've detected an energy signature consistent with a stealth ship on the planet's surface," Blake explained, gesturing to a holographic map. "Your team will deploy near the hidden compound and investigate." Captain Chen stepped forward, her sharp eyes scanning the assembled group. "We'll split into 2 teams. Lewis, you'll lead the infiltration team with Estelle. Commander Zax and I will coordinate from a command post." As the team boarded the drop ship, Louis felt a mix of anticipation and unease. The vessel shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere, and he found himself instinctively reaching for Estelle's hand. She gripped it firmly, her 4 eyes meeting his with a look of commitment. The dropship touched down in a clearing surrounded by dense alien foliage. Lewis led his team towards the compound, their footsteps muffled by the strange, spongy ground. As they approached, a shimmering barrier became visible, a telltale sign of an advanced security system. "This is a hybrid of human and Kazan tech," Estelle whispered, her fingers dancing over a portable scanner. "I can bypass it, but it'll take time." Louis nodded, signaling the team to take defensive positions. He watched in awe as Estelle worked, her knowledge of Kazan systems proving invaluable. With a final tap, the barrier flickered and disappeared. "We're in," Estelle said, a hint of pride in her voice. The team moved silently through the compound, descending into a vast underground facility. Louis's eyes widened at the sight of stolen technology and weaponry from both species lining the walls. "This is worse than we thought," he murmured to Estelle. "They're not just trying to start a war, they're arming themselves for it." As they delved deeper, an acrid smell assaulted their senses. They entered a laboratory filled with complex equipment and ominous-looking vials. "By the stars," Estelle gasped, her skin paling. "This is a bioweapons lab." Louis's blood ran cold as he examined the data on a nearby console. "It's designed to target both humans and Kazan. If this gets out..." An ear-splitting alarm cut through the air, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. Louis and Estelle shared a look of dogged commitment as they took cover behind lab equipment. The air erupted with weapons fire as extremist forces poured into the lab. Louis and Estelle moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other as they returned fire. Their teamwork didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the squad, who began to follow their lead. In the chaos of the battle, Louis saw a grenade arcing towards Estelle. Without hesitation, he lunged, pushing her out of the way. The explosion sent him flying, pain searing through his side. Estelle's face swam into view as she dragged him behind a fallen console. Her touch was gentle as she examined his wound, her limited knowledge of human physiology guiding her actions. "You saved my life," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Louis managed a weak smile. "Consider us even." The moment was shattered by another volley of weapons fire. Estelle's expression hardened as she turned back to the battle, her movements more determined than ever. As the firefight intensified, Louis struggled to his feet. "We need to secure that bioweapon research," he shouted over the din. "If it leaves this compound, both our worlds are at risk." Estelle nodded, her mind already racing. "I have an idea, but it'll require perfect coordination between our species." Louis grinned, ignoring the pain in his side. "Then it's a good thing we make such a great team." They quickly divided their forces, Louis taking charge of the human operatives while Estelle led the Kazan. Their plan was daring, relying on the unique strengths of each species. The next few minutes were a blur of action. Human agility combined with Kazan strength as they outmaneuvered the extremists. Louis found himself marveling at the seamless cooperation between the two species, a testament to how far they'd come in such a short time. With a final push, they secured the bioweapon research and apprehended key extremist leaders. As the dust settled, Lewis allowed himself a moment of relief. That relief was short-lived. A nearby console crackled to life, intercepting a transmission that made their blood run cold. "This is only the beginning," a distorted voice declared. "Our forces are in position. The attacks on both homeworlds will commence on schedule." Louis and Estelle locked eyes, the weight of this new threat settling over them. They knew that official channels would move too slowly to prevent the impending attacks. "We have to go after them ourselves," Estelle said, voicing what they were both thinking. Louis nodded, his grit strengthening. "It's our only chance to stop this before it's too late." They turned to face their team, including the skeptical Commander Zax and Captain Chen. Louis took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to propose went against every protocol. "We don't have time to wait for official approval," he began, his voice steady. "If we're going to prevent these attacks and stop this war before it starts, we need to act now." Estelle stepped forward, her presence lending weight to Louis' words. "We've proven that our species can work together. Now we need to take that cooperation further than ever before." For a tense moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, Commander Zax nodded. "You've shown me that perhaps there is hope for our peoples. After all," he rumbled, "I will follow your lead." Captain Chen's lips quirked in a half-smile. "Well, I suppose we're already breaking every rule in the book. Might as well see it through." As they boarded their ship, leaving the compound and its secrets behind, Louis felt a mix of trepidation and excitement. They were embarking on a mission with no guarantee of success, chasing a threat that could destroy everything they held dear. On the bridge, Louis found himself standing next to Estelle, their hands nearly touching on the console. He glanced at her, taking in her determined expression and the way her skin shimmered under the ship's lights. "Ready?" he asked softly. Estelle's four eyes met his, filled with a complex mix of emotions. "With you? Always." As the ship broke orbit, accelerating in pursuit of the extremist cell, Louis knew that the challenges ahead would test them like never before. But with Estelle by his side and their newfound allies at their backs, he dared to hope that they might just save both their worlds and forge a new future in the process. As the ship broke orbit, accelerating in pursuit of the extremist cell, a violent shudder rocked the vessel. Warning alarms blared throughout the bridge, and the main propulsion system sputtered and died. "Status report!" Captain Chen barked, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Main engines are offline," reported a crew member. "We're losing power fast." Louis exchanged a worried glance with Estelle. "Can we make repairs?" Before anyone could answer, the ship lurched again, caught in the gravitational pull of a nearby planet. "Brace for impact!" Commander Zax shouted as the vessel plummeted through the atmosphere. The ship crashed into a desolate landscape, skidding across rocky terrain before coming to a violent stop. As the dust settled, Louis helped Estelle to her feet. "Everyone okay?" he called out, wincing at a sharp pain in his side. A chorus of groans answered him as the crew picked themselves up. Captain Chen activated the external sensors and frowned at the readings. "The atmosphere is highly toxic," she announced. "We'll need protective suits to go outside." As the team donned their gear, Louis noticed Estelle struggling with her helmet seal. He moved to assist her, their gloved hands brushing as he secured the latch. "Thanks," she said, her voice slightly muffled through the comm system. Outside the ship, the alien landscape stretched out before them. Strange, twisted rock formations loomed in the distance, half hidden by a swirling, noxious mist. "We need to find materials to repair the ship," Captain Chen said. "Split into teams and search the area. And be careful, we don't know what's out there." Louis and Estelle set off together, their suit sensors scanning for useful minerals or technology. As they crested a ridge, Estelle suddenly froze. "Louis, look!" she exclaimed, pointing to a massive structure partially buried in the mountainside. They approached cautiously, marveling at the intricate designs etched into the weathered stone. It was clearly artificial, yet far more advanced than anything in human or Kazan history. "This predates both our civilizations," Louis murmured in awe. As they examined the structure, Estelle's hand brushed against a hidden panel. With a grinding sound, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a dark passageway. "Should we go in?" Estelle asked, her 4 eyes wide with curiosity. Louis hesitated, then nodded. "We might find something to help repair the ship. Just stay close." They entered the passage, their suit lights illuminating ancient corridors lined with unfamiliar technology. As they ventured deeper, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly, a piercing alarm echoed through the facility. Before they could react, a force field sprang up between them and the exit. Another shimmering barrier appeared, separating Louis and Estelle from the rest of their team. "No!" Louis shouted, pounding against the invisible wall. A hissing sound filled the chamber, and Louis felt a change in air pressure. A nearby console flickered to life, displaying unfamiliar symbols. "The life support systems are activating," Estelle said, studying the alien script. "The air should be breathable now." Cautiously, they removed their helmets. The air was stale, but non-toxic. Louis tapped his comm unit, but only static answered. "We're cut off," he said grimly. "We need to find another way out." As they explored their confined space, Louis and Estelle discovered more alien technology. They worked together, combining their knowledge to decipher the strange machines. Hours passed as they struggled to understand the facility's systems. During a brief rest, Louis found himself studying Estelle's profile in the dim light. "Tell me about your family," he said softly. "What was it like growing up on your world?" Estelle's expression softened as she shared stories of her childhood. Louis listened, struck by how familiar her experiences felt despite their alien nature. He found himself opening up about his own past, sharing hopes and fears he'd never voiced before. As they talked, a warmth grew between them, transcending the barriers of their species. Louis felt a connection to Estelle that went beyond their shared mission or political alliance. Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the chamber. A nearby console erupted in a shower of sparks, revealing a pulsing energy core. "This could be exactly what we need to boost our ship's capabilities," Estelle said excitedly. As they worked to extract the energy source, the facility's systems began to destabilize. Alarms blared, and the walls around them groaned ominously. "We need to get out of here," Louis shouted over the noise. They raced through collapsing corridors, ducking falling debris and leaping over widening chasms. Louis's heart pounded as he realized how close they'd come to being trapped forever. Just as they neared the exit, a massive tremor split the floor between them. Louis found himself on one side of a growing chasm, Estelle on the other. Without hesitation, Louis activated the alien device they'd salvaged. A bridge of pure energy sprang into existence, connecting the two sides. "Go!" he shouted to Estelle. "I'll be right behind you." Estelle crossed safely, but the effort of maintaining the bridge left Louis drained. As he stumbled forward, the floor beneath him gave way. In a blur of motion, Estelle leapt back across the chasm. Her strong arms wrapped around Louis, pulling him to safety as the chamber collapsed behind them. They emerged into the toxic atmosphere, gasping inside their hastily donned helmets. The rest of their team rushed to meet them, led by a visibly relieved Commander Zax and Captain Chen. As they made their way back to the ship, Louis noticed a change in the group dynamics. Human and Kazon crew members worked side by side, their previous animosity replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Using the alien energy source, they repaired and enhanced their ship's systems. As the crew made final preparations for departure, Louis found a moment alone with Estelle. "I thought I'd lost you back there," he said softly, his hand hovering near hers. Estelle's 4 eyes met his, filled with an intensity that made his breath catch. "I couldn't leave you behind," she replied. "We're in this together, remember?" The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken emotions. But before either could act, Captain Chen's voice rang out over the intercom. "All hands, prepare for immediate departure. We have an extremist cell to catch." As they took their positions on the bridge, Louis and Estelle exchanged a look of grit. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The ship's engines roared to life, enhanced by the alien technology. As they broke free of the planet's atmosphere, Louis felt a surge of hope. With their newfound unity and advanced capabilities, they had a real chance of stopping the extremists and forging a new future for both their species. The stars streaked past as they accelerated into the vastness of space, racing against time to prevent interstellar war. The stars streaked past as they accelerated into the vastness of space, racing against time to prevent interstellar catastrophe. Louis felt a surge of optimism as he gazed at the advanced displays on the bridge, their alien enhancements pulsing with an otherworldly energy. His moment of hope was short-lived. A violent tremor shook the ship, nearly throwing him from his seat. Alarms blared as the main view screen flickered and dimmed. "Report!" Captain Chen barked, her fingers dancing across her console. A human technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "The alien energy source is destabilizing. We're experiencing power fluctuations across all systems." Louis exchanged a worried glance with Estelle. The very technology that had given them a fighting chance now threatened to strand them in the void of space. "We need to stabilize it," Estelle said, her four eyes narrowing in concentration. "Louis, your expertise in human engineering combined with my knowledge of Kazon systems might be our best shot." He nodded, already moving towards the engine room. "Let's go." As they worked side by side in the cramped space, Louis became acutely aware of Estelle's presence. The warmth radiating from her alien body, the subtle shimmer of her skin under the emergency lights, it all served to heighten the ungrit tension between them. "Hand me that plasma coupler," Estelle said, her voice low and focused. As Louis passed her the tool, their fingers brushed. A jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them, and for a moment the rest of the universe faded away. The spell was broken by Commander Zax's gruff voice over the intercom. "We've decoded more data from the extremist base. We've found their main headquarters. It's hidden in an asteroid field on the edge of Kazon space." Louis and Estelle redoubled their efforts, knowing that every second counted. They managed to stabilize the energy source enough for continued operation, but the ship's systems remained precarious. As they approached the asteroid field, a new threat loomed. A patrol of Kazon warships moved to intercept them, unaware of the joint mission's nature. "They'll tear us apart before we can explain," Captain Chen said, her voice tight with tension. Louis's mind raced. He turned to Estelle, an idea forming. "The alien energy source, we could use its instability to our advantage. If we modulate the output just right." Estelle's eyes widened in understanding. "A massive energy burst. It won't harm their ships, but it could overload their sensors long enough for us to slip by." They worked in perfect sync, adjusting the energy flow with precision. The ship shuddered as a wave of pure energy erupted from its core, washing over the Kazon patrol. On the display, the enemy vessels drifted, their systems temporarily scrambled. "Now's our chance," Commander Zax growled. "Take us in." The ship darted forward, weaving through the asteroid field. Each maneuver put immense strain on the already taxed systems. Warning lights flashed across every console as the alien energy source approached critical instability. Louis's mind raced, weighing their options. The unstable energy could be their downfall, or their salvation. He turned to the bridge crew, his expression grim. "We can use the energy source as a weapon against the extremist base," he said. "But someone will need to manually adjust the output from the engine room. The radiation levels—" Before he could finish, Estelle stepped forward. "I'll do it. My Kazon physiology can withstand higher levels of radiation than humans." Louis felt his heart constrict. "Estelle, no, it's too dangerous." She met his gaze, her willpower evident. "It's our best chance, Louis. You know that." As Estelle made her way to the engine room, the ship launched its assault on the hidden base. Louis coordinated the attack from the bridge, his movements crisp and efficient, even as worry gnawed at him. The extremists, caught off guard by the joint human-Kazon force, struggled to mount an effective defense. But time was running out. Louis watched Estelle's life signs on a nearby monitor, his jaw clenching as he saw them begin to falter. Without a word, he left his post and sprinted towards the engine room. He ignored the protests of Commander Zax and Captain Chen, focused solely on reaching Estelle. He found her slumped over the controls, her movements sluggish. Without hesitation, Louis joined her, his hands moving in concert with hers as they worked to stabilize the energy output. "Louis," Estelle murmured, her voice weak, "you shouldn't be here." "We started this together," he replied, fighting through the waves of nausea induced by the radiation. We'll finish it together. Their combined efforts paid off. They channeled the unstable energy into a searing beam, directing it at the heart of the extremist base. The resulting explosion rocked the ship, nearly knocking them off their feet. As alarms blared and warning lights flashed, Louis and Estelle shared a moment of triumph. Their eyes met, a universe of unspoken emotion passing between them. Then, as one, they collapsed. The last thing Louis felt before losing consciousness was Estelle's arms around him, their bodies intertwined as the world faded to black. Darkness. Louis's eyes fluttered open, his vision blurry and unfocused. The harsh glare of medical bay lights assaulted his senses, and he groaned, trying to piece together what had happened. As consciousness slowly returned, he became aware of a dull ache permeating his entire body. "Easy there," a soothing voice said. "You've been through quite an ordeal." Louis turned his head, wincing at the effort, to see a human woman in a medical uniform standing over him. Her name tag read, Dr. Ilara Voss. Where am I?" Louis croaked, his throat dry and scratchy. "You're on Space Station Harmony," Dr. Voss explained, adjusting something on a nearby monitor. "You and Estelle were brought here after the mission. The radiation exposure was severe." At the mention of Estelle's name, Louis's heart rate spiked. He tried to sit up, ignoring the protest of his aching muscles. "Estelle! Is she—" Dr. Voss gently pushed him back down. "She's alive, but still unconscious. Your conditions are unique. I've never seen anything quite like it." Before Louis could ask for clarification, the medical bay doors hissed open. Commander Zax and Captain Chen strode in, their faces a mix of relief and concern. "Good to see you awake, Louis," Chen said, her usual stern expression softening slightly. Zax nodded in agreement. "You two pulled off quite the feat. The extremist base is nothing but space dust now." Louis's mind raced, trying to process everything. "How long have we been here?" 5 days, Dr. Voss answered. "And there's something you need to know about your condition." She explained the unprecedented connection between Louis and Estelle, how their physiologies had become intertwined at a cellular level. Louis listened in stunned silence, his gaze drifting to a nearby bed where Estelle lay motionless, her Kazon features serene in unconsciousness. A violent tremor suddenly rocked the station, nearly knocking them off their feet. Alarms blared as the lights flickered ominously. "What the hell was that?" Zax growled, steadying himself against a medical console. Chen's communicator chirped to life. "Captain, we've got multiple explosions across the station. It's some kind of attack." Louis struggled to his feet, ignoring Dr. Voss's protest. "We need to get out of here," he said, his legs shaky but willpower driving him forward. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. The lights in the medical bay went out, plunging them into darkness broken only by the red glow of emergency lighting. "The life support systems!" Dr. Voss cried, rushing to check on her patients. "Without power, we can't maintain the delicate balance needed for Louis and Estelle's treatment." Louis stumbled to Estelle's bedside, his hand finding hers in the dim light. He felt a jolt of energy pass between them, and suddenly his senses sharpened. The pain in his body receded, replaced by a surge of strength. Estelle's eyes snapped open, all 4 of them locking onto Louis's face. "Louis," she whispered, her grip tightening on his hand. "What's happening?" Before he could answer, the medical bay doors burst open. A group of armed individuals stormed in, their weapons trained on the occupants. At their head was a man with a manic gleam in his eyes. "Marcus Vane," Chen spat, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Vane's gaze swept the room, lingering on Louis and Estelle. Well, he said, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Looks like we've found our prize specimens, the living proof of human Kazon unity." Louis felt Estelle tense beside him, her alien muscles coiling with barely restrained energy. He squeezed her hand, a silent signal passing between them. "You're making a mistake, Vane," Zax growled, positioning himself between the intruders and the others. "Whatever you're planning, it won't work." Vane laughed, the sound harsh and humorless. "Oh, I think it will. We're going to show the galaxy that humans and Kazan can never truly coexist. And we'll start by destroying the abominations your scientists have created." He raised his weapon, aiming it squarely at Louis and Estelle. Time seemed to slow as Louis locked eyes with Estelle, a lifetime of unspoken emotions passing between them in an instant. Just as Vane's finger tightened on the trigger, Louis and Estelle moved as one. With strength born of desperation and their unique connection, they lunged forward, their combined momentum knocking Vane off balance. Chaos erupted in the medical bay as Zax and Chen sprang into action, tackling the nearest extremists. Dr. Voss grabbed a nearby medical instrument, wielding it like a club as she fought to protect her patients. Louis and Estelle found themselves back-to-back, facing off against Vane's followers. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, each anticipating the other's actions with uncanny precision. It was as if their minds had merged, operating as a single, formidable unit. As they fought, Louis became aware of a strange energy building within him, within them both. It pulsed and crackled, growing stronger with each passing second. He caught Estelle's eye, and in that moment, they both understood what needed to be done. They clasped hands, focusing on the alien energy that now flowed through their veins. With a shared cry of effort, they released it in a blinding burst of light and force. The extremists were thrown back, their weapons clattering to the floor. Vane stumbled, his face a mask of shock and fear as he realized his plan was unraveling. But the energy release had taken its toll. Louis felt his knees buckle, and beside him, Estelle swayed unsteadily. As darkness crept into the edges of his vision, Louis saw Zax and Chen moving to secure Vane and his followers. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness claimed him was Dr. Voss's urgent voice. "We need to get them stabilized now. Their connection, it's changing, evolving." Louis's grip on Estelle's hand remained firm, even as they both slipped into darkness, their fates now more intertwined than ever. Ever than before. As consciousness slowly returned, Louis became aware of a cacophony of sounds surrounding him. Alarms blared, voices shouted, and the unmistakable crackle of electrical fires filled the air. He forced his eyes open, blinking against the harsh emergency lighting that bathed the medical bay in an eerie red glow. Beside him, Estelle stirred, her four eyes opening in unison. Their gazes locked, and Louis felt a surge of energy pass between them, momentarily dulling the pain that racked his body. "We need to move now!" Dr. Voss's urgent voice cut through the chaos. She appeared at their bedside, her face etched with worry and purpose. "The station's power grid is failing. We can't maintain your life support systems here much longer." Louis tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. Estelle squeezed his hand, and he felt a strange sensation, as if her thoughts were flowing into his mind. Without words, he understood her intention. Together, they struggled to sit up, ignoring the protests of their battered bodies. Dr. Voss and her team worked frantically around them, disconnecting monitoring equipment and preparing mobile life support units. The doctor's hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Louis could see the fear in her eyes. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. The lights flickered ominously, and several pieces of medical equipment shut down with a discordant whine. "That's it," Dr. Voss announced, her voice tight. "We're out of time. We need to wake them fully." Louis felt a sharp prick in his arm as Dr. Voss administered an injection. Almost immediately, a wave of clarity washed over him, pushing back the fog of unconsciousness. Beside him, Estelle gasped, her grip on his hand tightening. As their minds cleared, Louis became acutely aware of Estelle's presence, not just physically, but mentally. He could sense her emotions, her thoughts, as if they were his own. Their eyes met, and a wordless understanding passed between them. "What's happening to us?" Estelle asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Dr. Voss could answer, the medical bay doors burst open. Commander Zax and Captain Chen rushed in, their uniforms scorched and faces smeared with soot. "Status report," Chen demanded, her eyes scanning the room. Dr. Voss quickly explained the situation, her words punctuated by the sounds of distant fighting. "Their physiologies are intertwined in ways we've never seen before. The alien technology has fundamentally altered their cellular structure." Zax's eyes narrowed as he looked at Louis and Estelle. Can they fight? Absolutely not, Dr. Voss began, but Louis cut her off. We can help, he said, surprised by the strength in his voice. He glanced at Estelle, who nodded in agreement. You don't understand, Estelle added, addressing the group. We can feel the station, the alien energy. It's everywhere. Chen and Zax exchanged concerned looks. The extremists are trying to overload the reactor core, Chen explained. If they succeed, the entire station will be destroyed. Louis closed his eyes, focusing on the strange energy coursing through his veins. Through his connection with Estelle, he could sense the station's systems, the flow of power, and the critical points of failure. We can stop them, Louis said, his eyes snapping open. But we need to get to the command center. Dr. Voss started to protest, but another explosion cut her off. The lights in the medical bay went out completely, leaving them in darkness broken only by the glow of emergency backup systems. We don't have a choice, Zax growled. If they can help, we need them. With the help of Dr. Voss and her team, Louis and Estelle were quickly outfitted with portable life support units. As they made their way out of the medical bay, Louis marveled at how in sync he felt with Estelle. Their movements were perfectly coordinated, each anticipating the other's needs without a word. The corridors of Space Station Harmony were a war zone. Debris littered the floor, and the air was thick with smoke. Chen and Zax led the way, their weapons at the ready, while Dr. Voss brought up the rear, constantly monitoring Louis and Estelle's vital signs. As they approached the central hub, the sounds of fighting grew louder. Louis felt a surge of adrenaline, heightened by his connection to Estelle. Through their shared senses, he could perceive the layout of the station with uncanny clarity. Wait, Estelle said suddenly, grabbing Louis' arm. There's a group of extremists just around the corner. They're waiting to ambush us. Chen raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. But Zax didn't hesitate. He signaled for the group to take cover, then peeked around the corner. His eyes widened as he confirmed Estelle's warning. How did you know? Chen whispered. Louis and Estelle shared a look. We just knew, Louis replied, unable to fully explain the sensation. Using their newfound abilities, Louis and Estelle guided the group through the station, avoiding conflict where possible and providing crucial intelligence when fights were unavoidable. Their enhanced perception of the station's systems allowed them to reroute power, seal off compromised sections, and stay one step ahead of Vane's forces. As they neared the command center, Louis felt a sharp pain in his chest. He stumbled, and Estelle caught him, her face mirroring his discomfort. The reactor, Estelle gasped. They're trying to overload it. We can feel the energy building. Dr. Voss checked their vital signs, her face pale. Whatever connection you have to the station, it's putting immense strain on your bodies. We need to end this quickly. With renewed urgency, they pushed forward. The doors to the command center loomed before them, the sounds of a heated confrontation echoing from within. Louis took a deep breath, feeling Estelle's willpower strengthening his own. Together, they placed their hands on the door, channeling the alien energy that flowed through them. The doors slid open, revealing the chaotic scene inside. Marcus Vane stood at the main control panel. His followers engaged in a firefight with the station's security forces. All eyes turned to the newcomers, the battle momentarily frozen in stunned silence. Louis stepped forward, his voice carrying an authority he'd never felt before. This ends now, Vane. As Vane's shock turned to rage, Louis felt the alien energy surging within him and Estelle, ready to be unleashed. The final confrontation was about to begin, and the fate of Space Station Harmony hung in the balance. Balance. Time seemed to slow as Louis locked eyes with Estelle, their shared consciousness allowing them to formulate a plan without words. In perfect synchronization, they raised their hands, channeling the alien energy that coursed through their veins. A brilliant pulse of light erupted from their palms, striking the control panel in front of Vane. The extremist leader stumbled back, his eyes wide with shock as the station's systems began to respond to Louis and Estelle's commands. Impossible, Vane gasped, his fingers frantically dancing across the now unresponsive controls. Louis felt a surge of strength, bolstered by Estelle's unwavering presence beside him. It's over, Vane, he declared, his voice carrying an authority that surprised even him. The station is no longer under your control. As if to punctuate his words, the command center's emergency systems activated. Blast doors slammed shut, cutting off the extremists' escape routes. Security force fields sprang to life, corralling Vane and his followers into a tight cluster. Captain Chen wasted no time. With practiced efficiency, she and her security team moved in, disarming and restraining the stunned extremists. Zack stood guard, his imposing presence enough to quell any thoughts of resistance. But the victory was short-lived. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Louis felt a sharp pain lance through his chest. Beside him, Estelle staggered, her four eyes blinking rapidly in distress. "Louis," she gasped, her voice strained. "Something's wrong." Dr. Voss was at their side in an instant, her medical scanner whirring. "Their vital signs are fluctuating wildly," she announced, her tone urgent. "We need to get them to a secure medical facility immediately." The world began to spin, and Louis felt his knees buckle. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Estelle's face, her alien features etched with concern and something deeper, a connection that transcended their physical forms. When Louis regained consciousness, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. The stark white walls and advanced medical equipment told him he was in a high-security medical facility. As his senses slowly returned, he became aware of Estelle's presence before he even saw her. "She's here," he murmured, his voice hoarse. Dr. Voss appeared in his field of vision, her expression a mix of concern and fascination. "Yes, she is," she confirmed, gesturing to a bed on the other side of the room. "Your vital signs stabilized the moment we placed you in proximity to each other. It's remarkable." Louis turned his head, his gaze locking with Estelle's. The moment their eyes met, he felt a surge of energy, as if an electric current passed between them. Without a word, he understood her thoughts, her feelings. They were as clear to him as his own. "What's happening to us?" Estelle asked, her voice echoing Louis's unspoken question. Dr. Voss pulled up a holographic display, her fingers dancing across the shimmering interface. "Your physiologies have undergone significant changes," she explained. "The alien energy you channeled has altered your cellular structure on a fundamental level. Your minds are now linked in ways we've never seen before." As if to demonstrate, Louis suddenly felt a tingling sensation on his skin. He looked down to see patterns of light dancing across his arm, mirroring similar patterns on Estelle's alien flesh. "Fascinating," a new voice interjected. Louis turned to see a team of human and Kazan scientists entering the room, their eyes wide with impossibly strong excitement. "We've never observed anything like this before." Dr. Voss introduced the newcomers as a joint research team assembled to study their unique condition. As the scientists began their examinations, Louis found himself acutely aware of Estelle's emotions, her mix of curiosity, apprehension, and an underlying current of affection that made his heart race. Over the next few days, Louis and Estelle underwent a battery of tests. They discovered that their mental link had grown far beyond simple telepathy. They could share sensory experiences, feeling what the other felt, seeing through each other's eyes. During a particularly intense session, Louis found himself overwhelmed by the flood of alien sensations from Estelle's perspective. Without thinking, he reached out, intertwining his fingers with hers. The moment their skin touched, a visible ripple of energy passed between them, and the chaotic sensations settled into a harmonious blend of human and Kazan perception. "Incredible," Dr. Voss murmured, her eyes fixed on her instruments. "The energy patterns stabilize when they're in physical contact. It's as if their bodies are learning to synchronize on a quantum level." As the days passed, Louis and Estelle found themselves drawn closer together, both physically and emotionally. Their shared experiences created a bond that transcended species, blurring the lines between human and Kazan. In quiet moments between tests, they explored this new intimacy, marveling at the way their bodies seemed to resonate with each other. Their growing connection did not go unnoticed. News of the foiled extremist attack and the unprecedented human-Kazan bond spread rapidly across both species' territories. The station buzzed with activity as diplomats, scientists, and curious onlookers arrived to witness the phenomenon firsthand. Not everyone viewed these developments positively, however. One morning, Dr. Voss entered their room with a troubled expression. "We've received a communication from the Kazan High Command," she announced, her voice tight. "Supreme Commander Draz is demanding that Estelle be returned to Kazan space for further evaluation. They're citing concerns about the implications of your bond." Louis felt a surge of protective anger, amplified by Estelle's own emotions. "They can't separate us," he declared, instinctively moving closer to Estelle. "It could be dangerous for both of us." Before Dr. Voss could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The room's holographic display flickered to life, showing a fleet of ships approaching, a mix of human and Kazan vessels, moving in perfect formation. "What's going on?" Estelle asked, her four eyes wide with surprise. The answer came in the form of Admiral Horatio Blake, who strode into the room with an air of urgency. "Louis, Estelle," he greeted them, his voice grave. "We have a situation developing. Those ships out there, they're part of a grassroots movement inspired by your story. They're demanding closer cooperation between humans and Kazan." As Louis and Estelle absorbed this news, they felt a strange resonance with the station around them. The alien energy within them seemed to pulse in sync with the station's systems. "Admiral," Louis said, his voice filled with a certainty he couldn't explain. "There's something in the station, something left behind by the aliens who created this technology. We can feel it." Admiral Blake's eyebrows shot up. "What are you saying?" Estelle stepped forward, her hand firmly clasped in Louis's. "We think we can access it," she explained, "but we don't know what we'll find." The Admiral studied them for a long moment before nodding. "Do it," he ordered. "Whatever's happening here, I have a feeling you two are at the center of it. Let's find out why." Hand in hand, Louis and Estelle approached the nearest computer terminal. As they reached out to touch the interface, the alien energy within them surged. The station's lights flickered, and hidden panels began to slide open, revealing technology beyond anything they had seen before. In that moment, as the station transformed around them, and the combined human-Kazan fleet held position outside, Louis and Estelle stood on the precipice of a discovery that would change everything. The next chapter of their journey, and possibly the future of both their species, was about to unfold. As they touched the alien interface, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies, more powerful than anything they had experienced before. The station's hidden systems came to life around them, panels sliding open to reveal technology beyond their wildest imagination. Louis and Estelle shared a look of commitment, their bond stronger than ever. Without a word, they stepped forward into the newly revealed chamber, embracing their role as the bridge between species. As they crossed the threshold, the energy surrounding them intensified, creating a dazzling display of light that rippled through the station. The moment they fully entered the chamber, their minds were flooded with an overwhelming torrent of information. Ancient knowledge accumulated over eons poured into their consciousness. They saw visions of a precursor race, faced with a threat so immense it threatened the very fabric of the galaxy. This ancient enemy could only be defeated through the unity of diverse species, each contributing their unique strengths and perspectives. As this knowledge integrated into their minds, Louis and Estelle's bodies began to change. Their cellular structures shifted and merged, blending human and Kazan physiologies in ways that defied conventional science. Outside the chamber, Dr. Voss and her team watched in awe as Louis' skin took on the mottled patterns of Kazan flesh, while Estelle's form became more humanoid. Admiral Blake, observing the transformation through a secure feed, immediately grasped the magnitude of what was unfolding. "Lock down the station," he ordered, his voice tense with urgency, "and get me a direct line to both human and Kazan leadership. We need to get ahead of this before it spirals out of control." In the medical bay, Dr. Voss and her team worked feverishly to analyze the data streaming in from their sensors. "It's incredible," she muttered, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. "The alien technology is rewriting their genetic code, creating an entirely new hybrid species. They're becoming something that's neither human nor Kazan, but a perfect blend of both." As news of the transformation spread throughout the station, reactions were sharply divided. Many saw it as a miracle, a sign of hope for lasting peace between humans and Kazan. Others recoiled in fear and disgust, viewing it as an abomination that threatened the purity of both species. In the heart of Kazan space, Supreme Commander Draz received word of the events unfolding on Space Station Harmony. His face darkened with a mix of anger and apprehension. "Prepare my flagship," he barked to his subordinates. "We depart for the station immediately. We must secure this technology for the Kazan people by any means necessary." As Draz's fleet began its journey, Admiral Blake found himself facing a potential crisis. The joint human-Kazan fleet that had arrived earlier now posed a complex problem. "We may need to defend this station against Kazan forces," he informed the captains. "I know this puts many of you in an impossible position, but what's happening here is bigger than any one species. We must protect Louis and Estelle at all costs." Inside the alien chamber, the transformation reached its climax. Louis and Estelle emerged, their bodies now a harmonious blend of human and Kazan features. Their minds had evolved beyond simple telepathy, becoming a single, shared consciousness with the combined knowledge and abilities of both species. With their newfound mastery over the station's systems, they activated ancient defense mechanisms. The station hummed with power as long-dormant systems came online, transforming the structure into an impregnable fortress. Louis and Estelle, moving and speaking as one, approached the main communication array. "We must share what we've learned," they said, their voices overlapping in perfect synchronization. They began broadcasting a message to all nearby worlds, human and Kazan alike, sharing their experiences and the critical importance of unity in the face of cosmic threats. As Supreme Commander Draz's fleet approached, tension on the station reached a fever pitch. Louis and Estelle, fully aware of the incoming threat, formulated a daring plan. They would use the alien technology to create a large-scale version of their own transformation, hoping to foster understanding and empathy among the approaching Kazan forces. Admiral Blake, seeing the potential for devastating conflict, proposed an audacious alternative. "Use your abilities to create a temporary mental link between key leaders," he suggested to Louis and Estelle. "Let them experience each other's perspectives firsthand. Include me and Supreme Commander Draz. It might be our only chance to prevent bloodshed." As Draz's fleet entered the station's space, Louis and Estelle set their plan in motion. They projected a field of alien energy around the station, enveloping both the defensive fleet and the approaching Kazan ships. The shimmering barrier pulsed with power, affecting the minds of all within its range. Suddenly, humans found themselves experiencing the world through Kazan senses, while Kazan minds reeled with the flood of human perceptions. The barrier between species began to blur, creating a network of shared experiences and emotions that transcended physical boundaries. In the command center of his flagship, Supreme Commander Draz gasped as his mind was suddenly filled with human thoughts and feelings. Simultaneously, aboard the station, Admiral Blake staggered as Kazan memories and instincts flooded his consciousness. The station hung suspended in space, surrounded by the pulsing energy field. At its center stood Louis and Estelle, their hybrid forms radiating power. As the opposed forces grappled with their suddenly shared perspectives, the fate of human-Kazan relations teetered on a knife's edge. The next few moments would determine whether this audacious gambit would usher in a new era of cooperation or ignite a catastrophic conflict that could tear both species apart. As Louis and Estelle activated the alien technology, the energy field expanded rapidly, enveloping both fleets in a shimmering cocoon of light. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the pulsing barrier. Within seconds, the minds of every being touched by the field merged into a vast, interconnected network. Supreme Commander Draz, aboard his flagship, felt a jolt as his consciousness expanded beyond the confines of his own body. Simultaneously, Admiral Blake stumbled, gripping the edge of a console as foreign sensations flooded his mind. Their eyes widened as they found themselves immersed in each other's memories. Draz saw flashes of Blake's childhood on Earth, the feel of grass beneath bare feet, the taste of sweet fruit on a summer day. Blake experienced the rigorous training of a young Kazan warrior, the pride of earning clan markings, the weight of responsibility thrust upon Draz at an early age. Throughout both fleets, similar scenes unfolded. A human engineer gasped as she suddenly understood the intricate workings of Kazon propulsion systems. A Kazon navigator marveled at the beauty of Earth's oceans, seen through borrowed human eyes. Louis and Estelle moved through the station, their hybrid forms radiating with alien energy. As they passed, the mental connections deepened, allowing for clearer communication across the network. They shared visions of the precursor race, glimpses of a civilization so advanced it seemed like magic, facing a threat that dwarfed the conflicts between humans and Kazon. "We were meant to stand together," Louis and Estelle's voices echoed in the minds of all present. "Our strengths combined are greater than the sum of our parts." As the shared experience intensified, a physical transformation began to ripple through the assembled forces. Human skin took on modeled Kazon patterns, while Kazon bodies shifted to more humanoid proportions. Panic flared briefly in some minds, but it quickly gave way to wonder, as individuals found themselves appreciating aspects of the other species in ways they never thought possible. Supreme Commander Draz, his mind intertwined with Admiral Blake's, made a decision that would alter the course of history. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice carrying both verbally and mentally across the Kazon fleet. "This conflict, it's meaningless in the face of what we've learned." Admiral Blake, experiencing Draz's change of heart firsthand, nodded in agreement. "Power down all weapons," he commanded his own forces. "We're witnessing the birth of a new era." The energy field pulsed with newfound harmony as the two leaders reached out to their respective governments. Initial shock and disbelief from officials on both sides gradually transformed into cautious curiosity. Louis and Estelle guided the process, ensuring that the transformation remained stable and voluntary. They created safe spaces within the station for those who needed time to adjust or chose not to undergo the full metamorphosis. "This is not about erasing who we are," they explained to a group of anxious crew members. "It's about becoming more than we were together." Days passed and the space station became a hub of frenetic activity. Scientists, diplomats, and civilians from both species flocked to the site, eager to explore the potential of the alien technology. Louis and Estelle found themselves at the center of it all, their unique perspective making them invaluable in facilitating the exchange of knowledge and culture. Dr. Voss worked tirelessly, analyzing the hybrid physiology. "The combination of Kazon strength and human adaptability is remarkable," she reported. "But even more impressive is the shared consciousness fostered by the alien technology. The potential for advancement is, well, it's beyond anything we've ever seen." As news spread across human and Kazon space, it catalyzed a societal transformation. The concept of two distinct species began to fade, replaced by a spectrum of hybrid individuals. This diversity became celebrated as a strength, opening new avenues for cooperation and innovation. Louis and Estelle, their bodies now fully stabilized in their hybrid form, stood at the forefront of this new era. They worked tirelessly to help others navigate the challenges and opportunities presented by the transformation. In a formal ceremony attended by leaders from across human and Kazon space, Louis and Estelle were named as the official ambassadors of this new hybrid society. As they addressed the assembled crowd, their words resonated not just through the air, but through the shared consciousness that now linked their people. "We stand here not as humans, not as Kazon, but as something new," they said in unison, their voices blending perfectly. "We are the bridge between what was and what can be. Our journey began with curiosity, grew through understanding, and has culminated in unity." As Louis and Estelle concluded their speech, they turned to each other, their eyes meeting in a gaze of deep understanding and love. Their hands intertwined, and the alien energy swirled around them one last time, a testament to the power of connection and the limitless potential of unity. The ceremony ended with a symbolic gesture. Louis and Estelle activating a newly constructed beacon, built with the hybrid technology. The beacon sent out a signal to the stars, announcing the birth of their new society and inviting other species to join in peaceful cooperation. As the signal pulsed out into the cosmos, Louis and Estelle shared a kiss, sealing their love and their commitment to the future they'd helped create. The assembled crowd cheered, their minds linked in a shared vision of hope and possibility. Yet even as they celebrated this momentous occasion, Louis and Estelle knew that their work was just getting started. The transformation of their societies was just the beginning. There were still challenges to face, mysteries to unravel, and a vast universe waiting to be explored. Hand in hand, they looked out at the stars, ready to embark on the next chapter of their shared adventure.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.